So Trent Horn gets on there and it was talking about in 2018, he did this little video or whatever and talks about the stuff you like to talk about or whatever, as in what's allowed in marriage and all that kind of thing.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And he says, let's start off first by defining what marriage is and what it's for. And that's exactly what you need to do. If you're going to figure out what is right and wrong, you need to find out what is true and reality first.
Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Jonah. We have our good friend John Farrell back, the annulment proof guy. John, how have you been?
That is so cool. You said my name. We're breaking new ground here. That's good.
I wanted to address that because it really was not that I didn't want to use your name. I didn't know if you want, like, I don't necessarily.
I know I'm an open book. You want my social security? It's fine. You want to know where I live? Come on over. Hey, buddy, I'm having trouble having anyone want to talk to me. People run the other way. Okay, that's it. My message goes over like a lead balloon. That's how popular I am. I've got basically nobody likes me except you. And I don't even know if you do, but you're willing to even talk because you're Uncharted, bro.
I have no problem talking to you, and I enjoy the conversation. Some of our fans are like, "Why are you doing this?" I'm like, "I don't know."
Listen, because you keep wanting to talk about marriage / NFP, all this kind of stuff. The fodder of Christopher West. That's kind of what you think about. You're wrestling with this, that, and the other thing in that regard. Is that about right?
Yep, and you definitely bring a strong viewpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, you are not lukewarm. You are black and white on how you stand.
No, you can't be lukewarm with things that are what do you call it? That are ethics.
Boy, you lobbed him a softball there.
Yeah. So anyhow, I watched a little Trent Horn. Do you like him?
I don't have anything bad against. I mean, I think he's better than some. I've tried to get him on the show, but I think I know who he is. He's okay.
So because people were saying this and that about Trent Horn, and I'm like,
his wife is awesome, by the way.
Who?
His wife is awesome.
I like her channel. That's funny. Too far.
She stopped after a year.
She stopped after a year. Go ahead.
Okay, so Trent Horn gets on there and it was talking about in 2018. He did this little video or whatever and talks about the stuff you like to talk about or whatever, as in what's allowed in marriage and all that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And he says, let's start off first by defining what marriage is and what it's for. And that's exactly what you need to do. If you're going to figure out what is right and wrong, you need to find out what is true and reality first. Otherwise, you're just talking. It's like Republicans and Democrats, got to define God first, and that's the issue right there. It's not about welfare and other stuff. Okay, so he says marriage is for the conjugal act, is for the mutual love of the spouses. That's the purpose of the act. That's what he said right out of the gate. Okay. Hey, Giggles, chill, man. It's like
I'm laughing more this time.
This is what we get.
Okay, all right. Maybe that's what's got to you're here for. All right. So anyway, listen. He goes, and I said, all right. So if that is the purpose, if that is nature, then you can't. The reason you're uncharted is because it's infinite. The good of the spouses or the mutual love is bottomless. It's definitionless. So it needs to be backfilled with as much theology of the body as you can possibly fit in your brain. And there's nothing left. You keep going. So therefore, what is bound by nature is out the window, because marriage is no longer nature, it's love. That's the issue right there. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't be here today. There'd be nothing to talk about. Okay. So this is why I was going to ask you, and I'm going to go ahead and predict that it's impossible or you can't do it to define marriage.
I can look it up in the catechism, but I don't know.
No. Yeah, go ahead. Whatever. This is the key point. Just like
Well, you could
we
say
can
it's like
talk-
it's a contract that you sign basically with your spouse to love and care for them, and I don't know what more needs to be
Yeah, I
said.
mean, I think it's. I guess in simple
Okay.
terms, I'd say it's a sacramental commitment between two people to live out their lives, the rest of their lives together.
And work towards the better of the other.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
No, that's not what that is not the definition of marriage.
What is the definition
Now-
of marriage, John?
It's the the definition is the perpetual and exclusive right to. I'll just see if I can get it right here. It's the right over the body for acts. It's the perpetual and exclusive right for acts suitable for the generation of children. That's what marriage is.
And where did that definition come from?
It came from the Bible. Then it is incorporated into canon law over the centuries, and then it is first spelled out in 1917 code.
Which code section?
It's yeah, I do. But hold on a minute. It's 1013. I could probably see if I can get it up on the screen and all that stuff. Let me see if I know how to do it. Share screen. I might be able to do that. At any rate, that is the definition of marriage. Hang on, I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna say 1917. I'll get it up here.
Oh, wait a minute. I think yeah, I got some different canon law verse here. Oh, wait a minute. I lost
Go
it.
ahead.
It's coming. I clicked on it, and
well, why don't you? While he's looking at it, let's keep talking. I can pull up section. What was the section? Code of Canon Law. What was the section number you gave?
1057.1 is what this is linking to, and I'm having difficulty finding it in the body of the text. But I'm looking here. We should.
I might be able to put it up on screen here. Just give me a second.
I'm trying to get it up on screen too. Can you? You can't.
Oh, let me see here. I might be able to just. You got it on? Oh
Yeah.
Man, we're getting high tech here. Holy cow!
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So, share this tab instead. Okay. Listen. This is what we're going to show you is the difference. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right thing. Sorry. The 83 versus the 1917 together. Okay. And this is where all the confusion is. This is why we even have something called the Uncharted Catholic Man right here, is because marriage is not defined in practice. Okay. It's like the difference between speed limit 25 and speed limit drive safe. Okay. There's no contradiction, but one is vague. All right. So we have so we don't belabor the point and go on and on and on. I'm going to go right to this code I'm talking about. All right, let's find it.
Okay.
Hang on. It's right here. Okay. This is the definition of marriage, which is the object of consent, the thing you're consenting to. Okay. Canon 1081. This is from 1917 code, which takes from the tradition of the church and nature. That's key that we're talking about nature. All right. Matrimonial consent. You can see that on your screen, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Matrimonial consent is the act of the will by which each party gives and accepts a perpetual and exclusive right over the body. That is the object of consent for acts which are of themselves suitable for the generation of children. Has nothing to do with love or charity or good. Okay. This is the object of consent. Perpetual and exclusive right for acts.
Can I ask a question?
Go.
So I get that. Are you saying that marriage itself is not separately defined? Because and I'm not an expert on the Code of Canon Law by any means, but matrimonial consent seems to be a particular feature of marriage, but that does not seem to me to be a definition of marriage. Am I misunderstanding it, or
Correct.
is that how it's defined?
Yes, because marriage is a thing. Okay, it's independent of you and me.
It's a sacrament, right? Right.
Oh, yeah, it's a sacrament, but it's also a thing in
Mhm.
nature with a definition. All right. When you buy
Okay,
a
but
house,
what is
that is
that? This isn't the definition of marriage, though. This talks about matrimonial consent, if
this
I'm
is
reading
the
this correctly.
object of consent. Okay.
Yeah.
When you buy a house, there's an object of consent there.
What is
It's
that? I don't
called,
even know what that means.
that means the thing you're reaching out and getting. Okay. So the object of consent, I don't mean the objective of the consent. I mean the thing. When you buy a car has 4 wheels and paint on it and an engine. That is the object of consent. You give me the money, I give you the car. That's the object of consent. The thing you're saying yes to. Okay. If you can't define car, you can't consent to buying a car. So we need to be a charted Catholic man, not an uncharted one. So if we're going to say yes to marriage, we need to define what it is we're saying yes to. And if we can't define it, we can't say yes to it.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things here. I mean, it's been a long time since I did my marriage vows, and I suppose you probably maybe wouldn't approve of them. They were done in the Novus Ordo, but I don't remember the. I mean, I remember.
What's
remember
wrong
being
with it? There's nothing wrong with Novus Ordo marriage vows. What's wrong with
okay.
that?
I don't know. You're talking about the Code of Canon Law in 1917, and then the
Right,
one
but
of
God doesn't
1983
change,
is
and neither
wrong.
does nature. Bruce Jenner would be a guy 100 years ago too. Doesn't make any difference.
Do we not have to? I don't want to talk about Bruce Jenner. So, but I remember one of the vows, one of the many vows we made was to be open to life, right? Open to welcome children lovingly or whatever. I think that was like one part of the vow. Like that, we made multiple vows. I don't even remember what they all were. You know, love and care for each other until we die.
So is the rest of that fake? Is what you're saying?
I
Like,
don't
are
know.
those real vows? Because that doesn't matter. It's only what's in canon law that matters.
Yeah, I mean, the matrimonial consent, the consent to the body, seems to me as one component of marriage. I'm not saying it's not important, and I'm not even saying procreation can't be "quote unquote" the primary end of marriage, but that's not really the definition of marriage. The
Okay, so
definition of
what is
marriage is
the
more general than
definition
that.
of marriage?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm speaking out loud. It seems to me that it is a commitment, a covenant for life between a man and a woman that's exclusive, permanent, and at least under the church law requires openness to life, welcome children lovingly from God. I'm sure there's other things, but it's really more about the relationship, because there's obviously much more to marriage than the conjugal act. Even if you're really lucky,
Okay,
it's an
so
infrequent thing. So that's just a small portion of what marriage actually is. The raising of the children itself
Is an important part.
is something separate from the conjugal act, but it's an absolute responsibility of marriage, right?
That's very fair.
So I don't think I don't think what you're talking about is the definition of marriage. I think you're talking about a subpart of marriage itself, however we
rights
define
within
that.
marriage, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean that's the way it looks to
okay,
me.
so marriage does have rights, correct?
I don't know if that's true. I think individuals have rights. I don't know if
Okay, so you don't know if it's true that marriage has rights.
I don't know. I've never heard that marriage, separate from the spouses themselves, has rights. It's not a separate institution. It's not a LLC or entity or like that. It's the couple themselves.
I'm trying to get this thing back on the screen, but anyway, no. Marriage does have rights.
I can add it. You want me to add it back up?
Sure. I don't know how did you take it off?
I did it on my end, so if you want, I can add it.
All right.
Just
So
if you
listen.
want.
So
Okay.
you'll see right here, Canon 10, marriage is consent gives each party and accepts perpetual and exclusive right. Right. There it is. See that word? Okay. So marriage gives you the right over the body. That's a canonical right. That's a natural right. That's a legal right.
But who has it doesn't say marriage has the right. It looks like
matrimonial consent. You are consenting to a right. Okay.
Yeah, the individuals have, not the marriage. The marriage isn't separate from the individuals, right?
Yeah. So marriage is an agreement, is a contract, is a solemn contract. You can call it a covenant if you want, but it still has rights. So it doesn't matter if you.
I disagree with you there, but I think it's more
Okay, so you're
semantic than anything.
disagreeing with the definition of marriage. The definition of marriage is consent to rights.
I disagree with you that Section 1081 is the definition of marriage. I don't think that's what that means. I think it is
Okay.
a part of marriage, but I don't think that's the definition of marriage. And again, I think it's more of a language and terminology thing rather than a substantive.
Okay,
thing.
does marriage have do spouses have rights within marriage?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I would say somewhat limited rights though too.
Okay, what are those rights?
Fidelity. So I think you have a right not to have your spouse.
Okay, so it says it right there. Exclusive. What fidelity is exclusive. You can't have 3 wives. It's exclusive. She has the right to one husband, and you have the right to one wife. So we got that part.
Yeah, and like the perpetual, I think
Perpetual
the
till
spouse
death.
has a right that it be till death, right? Yep.
Okay, so what other rights are there besides perpetual and exclusive?
Well, I mean, I think there are different examples of that. I don't know. I mean, it is primarily the right to be exclusive and perpetual. I think there is, and again, I think duties and rights are kind of two sides of the same coin. Like, I think, let's say my wife has a right to be supported, and I have a duty to support my wife. My children have a right to be fathered by their dad, and I have a duty to them to raise them well. So I think it's rights and duties that go back and forth is the way I would describe it.
Okay. Yeah, there's no rights without duties and vice versa. That's right. Rights and obligations go together. But
yeah,
we can focus on the word right just because it's easy. Okay. So we have a perpetual and exclusive perpetuity. You have a right till death, and you also have a right for exclusivity. A right to what? What are we going to do till death exclusively? What are we going to do? What other rights are there?
Support, like I said, I think
support. Where? Okay, support. The right to support. What is the legal definition of of support?
But here's let me answer your question this way. The matrimonial consent section is talking about the sort of activities of the body, right? The conjugal act. This is not the exclusive part of marriage. This is dealing with giving consent to the conjugal act, but this is not the definition of marriage. This is not the exclusive purview of marriage, and I don't think this is meant to be exclusive, that there aren't other rights and duties unrelated to the conjugal act, such as support, right? So you are talking specifically about.
Yes.
So
you're saying there's a right to support,
right? We don't have the whole the Code of Canon Law in front of us, but it seems to me that what you are talking about here is one part of marriage, and this speaks about the right to the conjugal act and the duties that go with that. I don't see this without reading the whole section to know that this is not the exclusive purpose of marriage. This is not the definition of marriage. There are other rights and obligations independent of the conjugal act. It probably doesn't talk about the right to support here because we're not talking about support. We're talking about the conjugal act itself.
And I did find a definition of marriage. I think what is the definition of marriage within the canon law? It's Canon Law 1055, Section 1. The matrimonial covenant by which a man and a woman establish between themselves a partnership of the whole life, and which is ordered by its nature to the good of the spouses and the procreation and education of offspring, has been raised by Christ the Lord to the dignity of a sacrament between the baptized. So that talks about the good of the spouses and raising the offspring.
That's 1055.
1055, Section 1.
I assume that's
right. I got it right here in front of us.
Well, that's Section 1. Oh, okay. And so is the...
It's a little bit of a different...
well, are you saying that
language.
1013 is the 1917 equivalent of 1055?
Correct. On the left is this is 1917 code, and this is 1983 code.
But did they renumber it then?
Listen, okay, so yes, they don't keep the same numbers. It's just a whole new thing. It's like when you reprint a book, you have different page numbers for the same information. Okay.
But the sections
But
don't always change. Like, hold on a second. Hold on. Before we get into a discussion about this, I want to make sure we're right. I don't know one way or another whether 1013 under the 1917 version is the equivalent of 1055 in the new one, if it existed at that time. Maybe it didn't exist. Are you saying with certainty that 1013 became what is now 1055 in the new Code of Canon Law? Is that what you're saying?
yes, that's right.
Okay. I have
Now,
no way of fact checking that. I'll take your word for it.
It's super simple. Listen, God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is. Okay. Marriage is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Who
Because
says that?
marriage?
That doesn't follow from being the fact that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever doesn't mean that marriage is.
Yes, because
So
marriage is natural and God created it from the beginning.
but
Marriage
sometimes the
never
church
changes.
does change definitions of things. So, like indulgences, for example, should that have
You're
changed as a
digressing.
result of?
You can change. You can change certain things, but you cannot change nature. Okay.
Says who?
It says
Like,
nature says who can change nature? Hello, nature
No,
doesn't change.
but
God
what
says
is
it.
what does marriage look like in nature then? Like when I look at
I
nature
can answer
to
your
see the
question.
definition of marriage, there's all sorts of wild stuff that goes on that's unacceptable for humans.
Okay, what does marriage look like in nature? Marriage is a natural institution, and it's for procreating kids. That's procreation.
And
That's
so
what
it could
marriage.
be polygamous then as well, according to nature.
No, because it has to be exclusive and perpetual.
Those are human
Exclusive or
definitions, though,
perpetual
not
right.
from nature.
Okay, pardon me. What's that?
Those are human definitions, though. That doesn't come from observing nature or observing the natural.
Okay, well, marriage is created by God. Okay, but marriage is natural, and the definition of what marriage is unchangeable. You cannot change what marriage is.
Okay.
If you,
I'm fine with that.
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah,
or
I
not,
mean,
but
you
okay.
don't know if that's true. If you can change marriage, or if you don't know if you can change marriage, then everything is up for grabs.
I don't think so.
I'm not sure if the definitions between early 1900s and the mid 1900s are all that different, or if that's significant. If that's what you're getting at, that
Okay.
the definition of marriage has changed, but then the second change is the one that's in error.
Okay, if the definition of marriage can change, then marriage has no definition, and neither does nature.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that follows.
So you're saying that it changed though in 1963
or 83.
83? Okay.
The definition of marriage has never changed and can never change.
Was it defined prior to 1917? That Code of Canon Law, was it defined in an earlier document somewhere?
Everybody knew once upon a time that marriage was for procreation and between a man and a woman. And now, since we're completely crazy, we have to actually say that two guys can't get married, and we have to actually say what the purpose of marriage is. But because NFP says the purpose of marriage is not procreation, we have thrown nature out the window, and we're trying to backfill with theology of the body.
I think you're making a big leap there. I don't think that necessarily follows. Like,
I know you don't, because you think nature can change.
I don't know that. I don't know that it's self-evident that the nature of marriage or understanding of marriage can't change. Like, I'm not saying it
understand all sorts of things, but you can't change the law of gravity by canon law.
The law of gravity is totally different than marriage.
Okay, gravity is it's God's in charge of gravity, not us. God's in charge of nature, not us. We cannot change what a fish is. Okay, you can't change that. No matter what canon law.
Classifications change all the time. Like, and that's basically what this is. Fish classifications do change. Animal classifications do change.
But
if I go to
just like this week, there was
different.
It was released that there was a study that came out regarding the genetics of birds, and the taxonomic classifications changed for those birds. And that's very similar to this.
If if evolution is true, then nature changes and nothing matters. And marriage is whatever you want.
I don't think
And
that follows. At
I
all.
would say that,
You
but
know.
to look at nature for the definition of marriage, I think isn't self-evident, like you said.
Can I just segue here just one thing, and we can come back to this, but let's take for granted, and I don't mean this in a flippant way. Let's just take for granted that what you're saying is true, and that marriage is defined. The definition of marriage is premised on the procreation of children. That's the purpose of the conjugal act. Can you, beyond saying, well, this is what the Code of Canon Law says, can you, let's say, defend or show why that is good in its own right, even if we didn't have sort of God telling us? Why is that sensible? Why is that a good approach to marriage? If you think it is, I don't know, maybe you don't.
it's not. Yes, it's okay. Why does basically? I think that's what you're asking me on email earlier. Why? How does this work out in real life? Why is?
Well, that's another part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When you act in accord with truth, things work out. When you start bending truth or coming up with your own truth, you hit the rocks. You cannot outsmart God and come out on top. Okay. So you have to comply with nature and reality in order to thrive. Okay. So nature dictates what marriage is and its purpose. And so if I'm answering your question, when you comply with that, things fall into place, which is what has gone on for 1950 years, which is why we had next to no annulments and next to no divorce.
Okay. Well, yeah, but I think you're living in a fantasy world where you think that prior to 1900, marriages were all great. People were happy. People weren't having affairs. People weren't making babies outside of marriage. Like people didn't separate and get divorced mostly because they couldn't, not because they didn't
And why
want
couldn't
to.
they? And why couldn't they?
It was poverty. Like it was nearly impossible from a functional standpoint, especially for a woman.
No, that's not why they
Believe in
couldn't.
marriage.
That's not why they
Certainly
couldn't.
one part of it.
Yeah.
I don't think you can say that women.
If we had the laws in place from 1950, the divorce rate would go back to where it was then.
I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't think it would, because when both people work within a marriage, it can create not only friction, but it can also empower people to leave that marriage.
Yeah,
if things aren't going well.
Do you think an absolute miserable marriage is better than a couple like separating? I mean, because you can have an absolute miserable marriage, even living under this, let's say, procreation is the definition of marriage. I mean, I would think
I'm
so.
sure.
I mean, is that what's your response to that?
God says, let no man put asunder. So if you have a quote absolute miserable marriage so that you find that you can't live that way, then you have the bishop separate you after a trial so that he can determine that there's just cause. Because
And what would the just cause be? Like, what kinds of reasons could the bishop have for permitting the divorce?
Yeah, if somebody likes to communicate with a golf club on a regular basis, or somebody will not, if somebody won't honor if someone will not if you defraud someone on their marriage rights, then you can separate.
And then what happens then? Are the parties entitled to like remarry at that point, or is it just a divorce?
No, because marriage is till death.
Okay, so it allows them to separate.
Yeah, that's right.
Legally.
So once upon a time, if you were going to separate from your spouse, aka divorce, you had to have the United States House of Representatives. The government had to approve your divorce. The entire Congress had to approve your personal divorce.
What year was that?
States. When I don't know, 1795 or 1852 or whatever.
Are you saying we should go back to that?
It's enough gridlock.
Yeah. Good luck.
Okay, so separation of spouses is brutal to kids and is child abuse. So it's definitely something you can't allow by human power. It's as funny as abortion. Okay,
Well, but
separation of spouses is that funny. It's
yeah,
shredding kids. That's what it does.
but kids growing up in a household where mom and dad hate each other's guts and are fighting all the time isn't
Okay,
great
so
either.
if they hate, okay, yes, but still you have to honor truth, which is let no man separate. So if spouses are being sinful, then it's still worse. You can hate your kid, but it's worse to abort them. Okay, so we don't solve sin by killing people. We don't solve unhappy marriages by killing the marriage. You can get the bishop's permission to separate, and then he says anybody who does not remedy the situation is denied communion. That's how you solve. That's what used to happen before 1950.
How long did that process take?
As long as an annulment takes. Not even that. It's separation court. Separation court. Your divorce must be happening on church property. That is the teaching of the church today. Right now, it's in canon law.
And how long? Like that separation phase is like how long?
I don't know.
If we went back to that, and I don't know that
A
we're
week,
not doing that, but
2 months, whatever. It's the he said, she said. He's like, she's mean to me. Okay, well, what's the problem? Well, okay, then you find out that somebody is not honoring the marital debt. Okay, so that's the problem right there. So this is why we have the definition of what you consented to. But when you look at Canon 1055 of the New Code, it says the matrimonial covenant by which man established between themselves a partnership of the whole of life. Okay, so what is a partnership of the whole of life legally? What is that? The answer is nobody knows. No one will tell. Not even Cardinal Burke knows what a partnership of the whole of life is legally. This is why marriage has no rights in practice, and everyone has an annulment on demand in practice.
That's not true.
It is true. If you
plenty
wanted
of
an
people that have had
annulment, you could get one. If you
I know
want one,
people that have had their marriage annulment denied.
I said,
Yep.
yeah, some people, if you want to bad enough and you can show that your marriage has hit the rocks, you can show that someone was not capable of the new rights, the new Spirit of Vatican II rights, which are partnership. Marriage is not a partnership because that's not nature. Marriage is a right over the body for acts suitable. It's suitable for the generation of children, not the generation of partnership.
So it sounds like everything unraveled in 1857 with the Matrimonial Causes Act. Before that, you're right, it was essentially impossible to obtain a divorce no matter how cruel either spouse was. A couple could only be divorced by the passage of a private act through Parliament, and about 10 of those private acts for divorce were passed each year. So that's wild. I had no idea.
Because we're talking about shredding the kids. So if you're going to shred the kids, you have to have an equal reason. Okay. In other words, if the parents are shredding the kids, then you got to take them out of there. But this needs to be judged in accord with divine law. That's in the new Code of Canon Law right now. Everything must be in accord with divine law on the separation, because what God has joined, let not man put asunder. So the bishop, per godly principles, must decide whether it's best. Okay. But you don't get to decide. I don't get to decide. Only the bishop does. That's divine law.
Is there a right of appeal past the bishop if you don't like the bishop's
Yeah,
decision?
sure. If the bishop says, I'm not granting the separation, then you can appeal that to the Roman Rota.
Oh, how long does that take?
Forever, whatever. I don't know. But it does say that if you are in danger of delay of this process, due process, you can go move on your sister's couch, whatever you got to do if you're feeling threatened. But if there's no danger and delay, you can't do that. And if you must pursue due process, go ahead. Sorry.
I would also say that even though I have rights over my wife's body and she has rights over mine, if she's not in the mood, the very nature of it would suggest that I don't have those rights at that time.
Rights where you don't have them don't exist. So if you have a right, to live in your house and the bank is not in the mood to let you in, doesn't matter, because you've got a right to that house.
So let's kind of let's talk through kind of an actual example. So you mentioned that if a spouse is not honoring the marital debt, that would be grounds to pursue this type of relief. Did I understand that much right?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
canon law
All right. Just
221.
wanted to
Yeah.
confirm that. Okay. So how do let's say I'm complaining because my wife won't be intimate as much as I want. How do I know whether, or how does she know, or how do we know whether she is complying with the marital debt? Like, what's the frequency, or what are the terms under which
If
I
someone
can request it?
makes a reasonable request for the debt and the person says no, that's grave sin and that's public. You have a public right. Okay.
What's a
So
reasonable request? Like, what does that mean?
not in the subway, in public, when somebody's deathly ill, in other words, normal. If it's normal. Okay.
Reasonable seems very
Okay, so reasonable
general and
request is
loosey-goosey.
basically St. Thomas Aquinas kind of outlines it. It's like, okay, if it's not in public, if it's not right after a baby's born, just normal. Okay, it's not rocket science. If you say reasonable has no definition, then there's no right. You have no rights. Okay,
Well,
but
you
marriage
use the
does have
term
a right.
reasonable, and I'm just
That's what
observing that
the
seems
church
like a
teaches. That you have the right to the act, and so if you say, okay, I'm taking my wife to court to the bishop because she's refusing the marital debt, then you say, look, we have there's no, everything is quote normal. Okay. But she's saying no because she doesn't want to have any more kids, or she's not feeling the love or something like that. So there is no reasonable reason to deny the right. RIGHT. It's right there but the new code doesn't speak of rights, but you cannot change what marriage is. A zebra is a zebra, no matter what code of canon law you're reading, because it's natural.
I know you keep saying I'm not going to fight you, and I don't know if that's true or not. I don't really
You've
need
got
to
to know if it's
argue.
true. You got to get there. Otherwise,
I don't know that I have to get anywhere. I mean, you say this,
if
but
you don't want to be lost in space, you do.
I don't think I don't think you have to be like, well, either marriage has to not change at all, or we're all going to become Bruce
If
Jenner.
you ask
Like, I
any
don't think
canon
that's
lawyer, does the
no.
essence of marriage change? They will say no.
Well, now you're talking about the essence. Now we're talking
The
about essence
essence
versus
is what
the
marriage
definition.
is. The essence,
That's
the
a new
essence
term.
of an iguana cannot change. It can't happen. The essence of what marriage is natural. You can't change it.
But then, too, you brought up support from Thomas Aquinas. And so Aquinas clearly advocated for prostitution, just as a necessary evil. Should we be advocating for that in the modern culture?
What do you think?
He asked you.
I asked you. I know how I feel about prostitution, but you're taking
Doesn't matter
the more
how
conservative
anyone
approach.
feels.
Oh.
And prostitution's always wrong, and no one should ever advocate for it.
But Aquinas did.
What? Okay, Aquinas doesn't ever advocate for prostitution.
Accordingly, in human government also, those who are in authority rightly tolerate certain evils, lest certain goods be lost or certain evils be incurred. Thus, Augustine says, and he goes on to talk about Augustine, but he is advocating for prostitution.
Which section of the Summa?
Okay, well,
it's this one.
Hold on.
This is dumb.
This is well, that's what he's saying, and I agree that I agree with you on that.
It's not. It's you're misrep. You're okay.
Hold on.
Tell you.
Hold on, John. Okay, I just want to, just for the record, I just want to see if we can find out where he's.
There's other more important things, and no one thinks that St. Thomas Aquinas says prostitution is good.
I don't care if anyone thinks it's tolerable.
He says it's tolerable.
Okay, when you're talking about there's you have to look at what he's saying, and he's probably saying something about the law and what do you tolerate based on what's the best way to apply the law.
Here's the rest. Here's the rest of the quote. If you want to hear it, accordingly, in human government also, those who are in authority rightly tolerate certain evils, lest certain goods be lost or certain evils be incurred. Thus, Augustine says, if you do away with harlots, the world will be convulsed with lust. So both Aquinas and Augustine supported prostitution.
No, it's not that they support it. but
they were
are
willing to allow
saying
it.
They were tolerating it.
I guess they're saying that when it's kind of like this, prohibition. Okay, all the do-good Protestants in 1920 said we're going to have prohibition, right? Get rid of it because alcohol is sin. Alcohol has problems. When you do that, you create massive problems. So when you get rid of all prostitution, it's going to create a whole nother backlash. So his point, I think I would have to look into this more, but he's saying a certain amount of evil is tolerated because if you go to stamp out everything that's wrong, you create a backlash that's worse. That's what he's saying. And the example of alcohol came to mind.
Well, and all I'm saying is that sometimes Aquinas says things that don't necessarily mean you have to support them or totally agree with them.
There's a reason why he's the angelic doctor, and Christ appeared to him and says, "You're doing a good thing." So until he appears to anyone else, you know what I mean? There's a reason why. So it's not cool to say St. Thomas Aquinas is lame, or he doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay?
You're putting words in my mouth there. I just said he was
think
fine. I'm very fine with Aquinas, but I don't think that you have to truly support every single thing he said.
I don't think he's entitled to a presumption.
Okay, so if you can prove, if there's whatever, unless you can prove something is wrong that he's saying, but it's what we were talking about was what we have. Unless you can define what marriage is, there's not much else to talk about. And Trent Horn doesn't know what marriage is. He doesn't know.
Yeah, I'm sure Trent Horn is a complete boob on this stuff. I mean,
no, he's not. It's just he's not stupid at all. But when you have to say that NFP is licit, you can't say it's for procreation, which means you have to say it's for love, which means you can't define it because marriage has no legal, because love has no legal definition.
I understand that's your opinion. I understand that's your opinion, but I don't.
Not an opinion; it's fact. It's just fact.
No, it's not fact. That is your opinion, and it may very well be right. I'm not saying it's wrong.
No, everyone having opinions does nothing. We can just sit here and talk about opinions forever. It's like I know you don't like to talk about Bruce Jenner. Bruce Jenner is a boy or a girl. It doesn't matter what anyone's opinion is on the matter. There's facts.
That has nothing to do with marriage or anything like that.
Yes,
well, no, we're not even talking about
natural. No, it's a natural.
I'm saying it's Europe. But I'm saying your comments on what must or must not be about marriage is an opinion. I'm not talking about what marriage is or isn't.
What God knows what marriage is, and
I hope he does. I'm sure he does.
Okay, and he can't. It cannot change. And
yeah. Okay. Hold on a second, though. But
he allowed polygamy.
Well, but even that, like, who God is, what God is, what marriage is, I think we can, whatever that is abstractly and objectively true. Whether we accurately understand that is a different thing. Okay. And I think what we're talking about is whether our understanding or conception of what, let's say, God is, or what marriage is, may not be perfect because we are not perfect people. Even Thomas Aquinas, as great as he was not perfect. So you may be right, and you are right. If marriage was ordained by God, whatever it is, but that does not mean that our human concepts of it or our understandings or definition of it is perfect or can't be changed or isn't in part wrong. That's the difference, I think. No one is changing.
The church is infallible.
But not on everything. The church is infallible in very certain limited respects. Not everything that the church
is infallible regarding faith and moral.
But marriage did change within the Bible. So Abraham and Jacob had multiple wives.
Marriage and never God changed in the Bible. Never changed in the Bible.
Jewish law only forbade a woman marrying more than one husband.
There's a reason why I say what I'm saying. There's a reason why. Because God said, because of the hardness of your heart, he allowed you to put away your wives so that you wouldn't kill them to get off them to get a new wife. Okay.
That's divorce. He's talking about polygamy. He's not talking about divorce.
Yeah, polygamy was allowed.
Okay. The reason.
And so the very nature of marriage changed.
No, the very nature of marriage is impossible to change. He allowed these things because of the hardness of heart.
I don't know
God
that
said,
polygamy is true. I don't know if that's true
I
about
was just
polygamy.
about to say something here. God said
Okay.
from the beginning it was not so. So from the beginning, marriage was exclusive and permanent. And
Where's that quote from? But in the
right
beginning,
there,
it was not so.
I think it's
Is it in the
somewhere in the New
gospel?
I
Testament.
believe it
From
is
the
Jesus
beginning,
saying in the
God
gospel.
allowed you out of the hardest of your heart, but from the beginning, it was not so.
But he's talking about divorce. Wasn't he talking about divorce?
was talking
there?
about
Talking
divorce
about
at
the
that time.
nature of marriage. If
Oh no,
listen,
no.
He was talking about divorce.
He was not talking about the nature of marriage. Well, we're even good enough Catholics to know enough of the Bible to know that's not accurate. You want to pull it up? Maybe we can.
It
figure out
is.
which one it is.
Okay, if the nature of marriage is fluid, then there's nothing to talk about.
Now, says who though? Like, I mean, no one's
Listen,
talking about being
dude, because
fluid.
then you have look,
Yep,
if the
okay.
nature
So it was Jesus talking about divorce.
Which gospel or is it?
It is Matthew 19. This is a New International Version. Why then, they asked, did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate of divorce and send her away? Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard, but it was not this way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital unfaithfulness, and marries another woman, commits adultery. That has nothing to do with polygamy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. So why was polygamy allowed in the Old Testament and not in the New Testament?
That's
That's
I don't
what
know.
we're asking.
That's a good question.
Because how can the very nature of marriage change like that?
It can't change. The reason is that
I don't know how else. Yeah. I mean,
okay. If the nature of marriage can change, then nature itself can change, which means that you can marry a dude if you want because nature can change. Who are you to judge? It's my opinion. Okay. We got nothing. Zero. All right. The essence of any canon lawyer anywhere will tell you the essence of marriage cannot change because they know this. But
And you're saying the essence of marriage is just the marital act.
the essence of marriage is perpetual and exclusive right over the body for acts. That's the essence of marriage. That's all it is.
And that's kind of a sad way to boil it down, I think. Like, I think
Okay,
marriage is
you
so
can
much
call
more
it
than that.
sad, you can call it whatever you want, but it's when you try to make happy marriage legal, you run into massive problems. And that's what we've done today. We've tried to legalize happy marriage by injecting love into the legal definition because we want a kinder and gentler marriage like George Bush or something. And now you have huge problems because it's like I have a right for this to work out and make me happy. I have a right to be happy. That's wrong. No, you don't, because that's not nature. Nature, you have a right to the act, but you don't have a right to love or happiness. You
do you
don't.
think setting aside for whether it's a right of marriage or essential to marriage, do you think that it can be sinful for one spouse not to strive for their spouse's happiness?
Sure, because everyone must operate with charity, and God will hold everyone account with how much love you give or whatever. So yes, it is sinful, but it's not part of the essence of marriage because marriage is nature, not grace. Hang on, let me hang up on that. Marriage is nature, not grace. That's why.
Then the only time where you don't have to strive for that level of love is during the marital act. Is that what you're saying? That is an absolute right that cannot never be denied.
Charity is never okay. I'd say I don't know if that's a goofy question or what. Listen, you always must have charity.
Everything
okay?
we ask is goofy. You're gonna have to be okay with it.
You always must have charity. However,
Mhm.
it's not legal. If it's like, yes, you must give to the poor, but communism says you will give to the poor or I'm going to shoot you. Okay. It's not charity. So you have property rights and you must be charitable with them, but you can't force that charity.
All right, here let me boil this down because I think we may be talking maybe about different things now. Do you recognize a distinction between what a marriage, like what can give rise to ending a marriage, and what a good marriage should look like? Are you saying? I mean, you're not disputing that a good marriage would have love in addition to procreation, are you? Would that be a better marriage?
But there's you can have terrible relationships and good relationships. Okay. But the foundation, the basis of the relationship is the right over the body.
Okay. I mean,
but you don't end all marriages end at death. 100% of them end at death, unless it's petrine or privilege or whatever. But for everyone else, it ends at death. That's it. Just like, it's a contract.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it.
We're not even here arguing about that. Like,
I think as long as you look at your spouse with love and respect and charity, that's fine.
Yeah, I think we're less interested.
You can look at your spouse with no love, no respect, and no charity, and it's still till death.
Well, sure, but that's not a great way to live.
That sounds like
it's not a great way to live, and you probably won't go to heaven if you do that. I don't see how you can, actually. But marriage has a legal definition based in nature, which can't change. And that's why Trent Horn is all goofed up now. And if you guys, that's why I opened up the show with this. And we've got it. You have to tell me I'm wrong and that nature can change and marriage is not based in nature. And
I don't think that's a full proposition. I don't think I can consent one way or another to that. I don't think that's
you have to consent one way or the other, or
I don't
you
have to consent to anything.
Okay, so that's why I'm saying God. I don't have to define God. I don't have to say what's true or not because I don't have to. Therefore, you got nothing. Okay,
so that's true.
We know what marriage is. Like we talked about the definition.
You know what marriage is. What's the legal definition?
I think we already talked about this. Like
you didn't know. You
no, we talked about it. Basically living in love.
Living in love is the legal definition.
Hold on just a second. I'll pull it back up.
You quoted to the canon law, that section.
Go ahead. Tell me the legal definition of
I'll tell you the canon law definition.
Yeah. We'll go back to the canon law. Actually, if you want to pull it up, I can put it back on the screen. Do you want to scroll up? Yeah, it's right there. 1050. Oh, so 1055.
Yep.
The matrimonial.
But that isn't the language that's in here.
It is.
That's the definition of marriage under Code of Canon Law 1055 under the 1983.
It's not the same language that I read.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes different translations have a tiny different word, but it's all basically the same.
Right, because it's in Latin originally, huh?
So marriage,
the matrimonial covenant by which a man and a woman establish between themselves a partnership of the whole life and which is ordered by its nature to the good of the spouses and the procreation and education of offspring. Right. That is basically the definition of marriage
under the 1983 Code of Canon Law.
So here now the definition of marriage from 1983 code and the 17 code and the 83 code define marriage identically. It is the same thing.
Hold on.
Same reality.
Say that again. I missed that.
The 1917 code right here and the 1983 code right here are legal definitions of marriage using different words and defining marriage identically. Same object, same thing.
I still don't necessarily like. I'm not convinced
because marriage cannot change.
Hold on.
Cannot.
Hold on. Number one, I'm not convinced that Section 1013 out of the 1917 version is the equivalent of 1055. I'm not convinced that there isn't another section in the 1917 Code of Canon Law that more closely mirrors 1055. But I'm not saying
this is
okay.
Yeah, there's not. This is the whole thing. This is all of marriage left to right, 17 to 83. Okay. Now, this is I want to tell you something right here that this is where the confusion is. It says marriage by its nature is ordered towards the good of the spouses. That is not true. That's not true. It is ordered by sorry?
Well, says who? I mean, this is Code of Canon Law. This is the official law of the Catholic Church says that.
This is
you're
why
saying
there's
it's
so
wrong.
much confusion, and I'll tell you why I say this. Okay,
Hold on. I'm not asking about whether there's confusion. Where does it say that is wrong, other than Mr. John Farrell? Where does it say?
Right here, I'll tell you right
wrong?
here. Here's where Canon 1030. It says the primary end is procreation. The secondary end is mutual help. Okay, and over here it doesn't say primary or secondary. The
I don't think
nature
those are
of
the same
marriage,
section.
the
I
nature
don't
of
think those are
marriage,
intended to be the same section, though. I think you're comparing apples and
wrong. They
oranges
are.
here.
No.
They're so
I'm trying to
different in
answer your
language.
question. I'm trying to answer your
Yeah,
question. I
yeah.
guarantee you these two are this is the old version and this is the new version. And by its marriage has one nature. Therefore it's only ordered toward one end primarily.
Who
Okay?
says that? Well, hold on. Why can something have only one nature? Like, or why can the nature have only one purpose?
That's this is basic philosophy. You can
That
only
doesn't mean it's reality.
I don't know. I mean,
listen. The this is why I'm telling you, all these Catholics are pointing fingers at each other, arguing because the devil has turned everybody against each other because the definition of marriage is an eclipse on this. The good of the spouses is secondary, which means it is not the essence. But when they do not mention primary or secondary anywhere in here, you have confusion. And people say, so now you have two definitions of marriage in one. It's for good of the spouses and procreation. It's for one or the other by nature, but not
I don't know
both.
that that's true, though. I mean, I think they're saying
And
they're equal. Like, I don't know that
I know you think that.
philosophically. Well, hold on. This is our podcast too, so let me articulate my thought. And I'm not. This is no disrespect for you, but I mean, I have a college degree in philosophy. It was a long time ago, and I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I don't know that it's true that something, especially as complicated as marriage, can have only one essence or one primary purpose. I mean, I'm not saying that's not true, but it's not self-obvious to me that something can only have one primary end. I don't know that that's a philosophical truth that's beyond debate.
I could
I mean,
probably
maybe
find
that's
it.
your yeah. Maybe that's your view, but I don't know that that's
Okay, so
universally obvious.
before the world went nuts, everyone knew that. And now when you're trying to justify your NFP, you can say the nature can change and there's more than one nature. It's the Catholic University of America talks about it. I can probably find that on the web too if we want, where they say that it needs to be nature. When they say that nature has one primary purpose. So at any rate, it does say in the Code of Canon Law that, right, by the way, when it comes to faith and morals, the church is infallible because you cannot change faith one day to the next. Otherwise, God can change. So when
Hold on. Yeah. Okay. But is the definition of marriage a matter of faith or morals?
Yes, it
What
is.
is it? Is it? No. I said, is it a matter of faith or is it a matter of morals?
Both. It's you. If you die, if you violate marriage, you can't go to heaven.
Oh, I don't think that's what it says.
Because what God, yes, divorce is grave sin.
Well, that doesn't
Yeah,
mean they don't get to heaven.
That's not the only way you can violate marriage. You can.
There's more than one way to violate marriage.
Well,
But
you
if
talked about
do
before. If you don't have charity for your spouse, that might be a mortal
okay,
sin.
marriage is nature, not charity. Charity is supernature. Marriage is natural.
I don't know
A
what that
natural
means.
marriage is the same as a sacramental marriage as far as what the stuff it's made of is.
Go ahead.
So, because the primary end is procreation and education, that is the natural purpose. If you're going to say marriage is love, which is charity, which is supernatural, you have now said nature is supernatural, which you can't do.
Can I ask you this question then? So, if the primary purpose or the essence of marriage is procreation, why do we need marriage to accomplish that? I mean, it's not like, I mean,
here's why.
Well, hold on, but like you don't need marriage to make babies and raise children, right? I mean, it can help you, but I don't think it's.
You have to have marriage to raise children.
Why?
Because they have to be educated in the faith.
You can't do that if you're not married?
No, because they turn into crazy, wild barbarians.
That's a generalization.
I don't think that's true, but
Yes, it is.
Ah.
If you procreate and leave the kid
no, you can
turns.
stay together.
Well, you can stay together, but
You
just not
can
be
live
married.
together, just
Okay,
not
you have to
be
educate
married.
in the faith. You have to
Okay.
form them in the faith.
You can do that whether you're married or not.
Okay, so fornication is evil, and if you're not married, you're fornicating.
No, okay, but then,
So
you're using, but again, you're assuming that marriage, that's the essence of marriage. I'm asking you, if it wasn't, you don't need marriage to so you're using your point to prove what I'm asking in an alternative situation. If you don't have to be married to procreate and raise children. You can be committed to each other. There's people out there all the time, never get married. They spend their whole lives together. I'm not
yes, but they're
endorsing
committed
that.
to
I'm not
committed to what exactly?
to each other. I mean,
Committed to, there's no contract, so they're not
don't have to be
committed.
contract. You just
If
do
there's
the
no
right
contract,
thing.
then there's no commitment. Commitment to what?
You don't
There's
have to have a
there's nothing.
contract to honor to do what you said. People do it all the time. People just do. People can do what they said they were going to do, whether there was a contract or not. Right?
Yeah, that's right. But you cannot. But you're not allowed. Okay, fornication is immoral. So the only way to justify it is by marriage.
Yeah, but it's fornication is immoral only because this is how we've defined marriage.
We haven't.
I'm asking
marriage.
why we have to define marriage that way. If marriage is just about procreation, this is a hypothetical. It's like this is a thought exercise.
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah. So if let's just assume, for just purposes of the discussion, that marriage, like you don't have to be married to procreate and raise children. It's not like, let's just say that's not a teaching. You can raise those children just fine. I mean, if that's the objective, is to produce children and raise them well, you could do that with or without marriage. If we didn't care whether marriage was there or not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't see how it follows that in order to procreate you must have marriage, or in order to have marriage you must procreate. I think marriage is is maybe the best way to raise children. I'm not saying that, but I don't think it's essential. Like, when you boil it down to procreation, I think marriage becomes far less essential to the situation.
Right.
Than
If it's just
there's
about
other elements
producing
to it.
kids, but yeah, you can produce. There's a lot of rap stars that have
Yeah, exactly.
10 chicks on the side and 57
Mhm.
kids.
Yeah.
But those kids aren't going to grow up to be saints. They're going to go down the tubes.
And you can't say that either. But I think that the goal of marriage is a healthy relationship, not even
the
children.
goal of
because
marriage,
I think that a healthy relationship produces children.
And that's
the real goal of marriage.
Okay, you can have a real goal, but that's not the legal definition.
All right, I don't know that it matters that much. I mean,
it matters because if you can't define it, you can't talk about you can't defend it, and you cannot talk about what's good.
I tell you what, I will with you. No one should get divorced. Okay, fine. I think I don't even care about that fight. I'm really talking about what is the right way to live within your marriage. We're both committed to each other. We both understand.
Here's the answer. I can help. The right way to live is per what God said, and that means
okay,
you're saved. You're saved through childbirth, and the
hold on. Where does it say that? Where does it say that?
The woman shall be saved through childbirth if she continue in faith and faithfulness and love.
So long as she makes babies, she's saved. Is that what you're saying?
If she continue in childbirth, yes. So in other words, I think it says right after.
This is 1 Timothy 2.
Yeah, fine, thank you. Yes. So
yet she will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control. So there's a big if there.
Right. Okay. So if you don't continue in childbirth, so it talks about how to be saved, because Eve ate the apple. She wanted to be like God, and then Adam wimped out. So God says, now what you have to do, you have to have kids, woman, and man, you have to work. This is what you do to be saved. So she has you have the marital right to the act. She has a bunch of kids. He works. When people do that, like they did for 1950 years, or not, things fell into place. But when you start saying marriage is love, you have thrown open the legal definition, and then divorce walks right in, and rights go out the window, because you have no right to love, nor can you define it. Because when you say I have the right to the conjugal act, your spouse can say, well, I have a right to receive love, and I'm not feeling the love, so love wins. That's where love wins comes from. You get rid of the marital debt, love wins, and you can be homo.
Okay, I'm going to read this, the Bible verse again. Yet she will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control. So the ancient interpretation of this text actually refers to the childbirth not to childbirth generically, like with the people of our day, but to the childbirth of the Messiah, Jesus, as far as like Jesus saved us, and it was through Mary's childbirth that saved everybody. Like that is the ancient interpretation of this text. And it correlates with Genesis 3:15, where the woman will crush the head of the serpent, essentially. And this prophecy is fulfilled ultimately through the birth of Christ. So they're not talking specifically about childbirth in the modern era. It was about one childbirth.
Well, it can't be, otherwise
No,
we
they
would
are.
not want to have celibacy and stuff.
They are.
So you're going to go against the ancient church on this?
No, I'm going to go against the modernists that wrote that commentary.
Those darn modernist ancient writers and the early fathers.
Right. In other words, if you get away from the Dewey Reams, you start getting 50-year-old commentary.
All right.
So St. John Vianney said, people go to hell for not having enough kids. This is what this means.
That's just his thought, though. Yeah. We can only hope he's wrong. Just
like I said,
Thomas Aquinas,
modernism is okay. The stuff is solved when you define the essence of marriage, and the church cannot err when it does that. So the old code said what marriage is. The new code danced around and didn't nail anything down. It didn't change it. It just became unspecific because they didn't say primary and secondary. That means the nature of marriage is whatever you think it is.
Can we switch gears here a little bit? And
all right.
So I had asked you, and I'm curious if you want to comment on this. So within marriage, what is the church's position on whether couples can engage in other mutual acts other than the conjugal act morally within marriage? What's the church say about that?
I think Pius, I was reading about this, someone brought it up. Pius XII said, no, it's all about the natural act. You must preserve the nature of the act, and that's the end of it.
Where does he say that? Okay.
I saw actually somebody pull it up on Facebook recently, and it explained, because we were talking about Trent Horn, because Trent Horn says you can kind of do a little extra here and there because whatever works to get it all together. And Pius XII said no, because you have to stick with nature. It's the nature of the act.
So these are two different issues, but let's tackle this one first.
Can you hang on a second?
Hold on.
I want you to push pause because I'm going to go outside for a second.
Following up after our break there. So what I think Trent Horn, and I'm not even familiar with what Pius XII document you're talking about.
Yeah.
Trent Horn is talking about engaging, let's just say oral acts within the confines of the conjugal act, let's say before. Okay. I think what Trent Horn was saying is that those can be permissible as long as the conjugal act occurs and completion happens the right way. That's different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about other acts that are completely separate from the conjugal act. But talking about that, you believe that the church says that you should not be using, let's say, oral stimulation, even if it's only done is within the framework of the conjugal act, as long as the conjugal act finishes the right way. Is that your position?
I don't even know if I want to talk about it. I think Father Ripperger talks a little bit about it, but basically, the nature of the act, you got to preserve the nature of the act. So
And what is the nature of the act? How do we like? What's the correct way to do it? We even got John to smile. Now go to confession, John.
Congrats, John. You're enjoying yourself.
The correct way to do it.
Yeah. What's the textbook way? That
All
we can
right,
do
we're
it?
lighting the smoke
All
and
right,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah, I was watching the guy who debates everyone on what's that show with all the prostitutes on it? At whatever. Remember at
I
whatever
know what
that
you're
guy.
talking about, but
He smokes a
I've
lot
seen
of talk.
clips of it, yeah.
He's a good debater, but that show is nuts. But I want to make a show that's kind of similar to that. Actually,
Okay.
Aquinas would have supported that.
No.
Him and Augustine,
So-
it sounds like.
yeah, I say from what I can tell, and from what that just you do what's natural per the generation of children, and the church doesn't come out and spell all this stuff out. Just there's a lot of stuff like during pregnancy, for example, they don't. There's certain things that just aren't mentioned, and you have to kind of intuit what's going on. The church is
It's
not
almost
going
like
to
the
come out.
uncharted part of this.
So there may be a reason for us after all.
So it's not. It's yes. There are some areas that are not just nailed down in black and white, but you're supposed to kind of read between the lines, okay? Because we can't say what's mortal sin and not mortal sin, okay? Like during pregnancy, for example. But you're just supposed to do the act. That's it. And if marriage is not for procreation, then things start to go all over the place. And then Trent Horn says you can use other products and all this stuff. It's like, and I'll have to show it in the show notes. I'll come up with the Pius XII quote that says, no, can't do that because of what the nature of marriage is. But if the nature of marriage is love, fulfillment, or whatever, then by golly, whatever fulfills you is nature. Okay. That way you can start gender bending and all that.
Do both spouses have a right to enjoy the conjugal act?
No, nobody has the right to enjoy anything. You can, it can happen and it's fine, but you do not have the legal right. You have the right to act suitable for the generation of children, not for the generation of enjoyment. You don't have that right. That's what marriage is per nature. It's the same.
Okay.
The reason, yeah.
So let's go back to the other example, the other acts that I was talking about. So let's suppose the couple uses oral stimulation to sexual satisfaction, but never engage in the conjugal act. Is that wrong, and why is it?
Yes, because Onan was killed for it. You have to
But he used conjugal. He used coitus interruptus. He actually
I know.
was engaged
In other words, the nature of the act must be preserved.
But you're not engaging in the act at all.
The nature of the act must be preserved, and
Okay.
that means the purpose. Just like Christopher West talks about, he does say a lot of stuff that's right, but he's in la la land because he doesn't define marriage correctly. But the purpose of the genitals is to generate, and if you're not generating, you're not using it for its natural purpose. Okay.
What's the purpose
That's
of the
what
clitoris?
All I know is the body is designed to generate.
Does the clitoris play a part of that, or is that got a different? Because my I don't. The back of my head isn't necessary for generation, but it's a part of my body. Is the clitoris part of the body?
I don't even really know what you're talking about. I don't know.
You don't know what the clitoris is?
Well, it's basically about pleasure, and it's there for a reason. I would think. I think God
put
it there for a reason.
Yeah, the reason why God set things up is because He wants children to happen, and the way things go, it produces kids. Okay.
So why did God give women a clitoris? They don't need clitoris to procreate at all.
Nature set things up so that babies happen.
Well,
so is that evolution, or are we talking creation still?
No. There is no there is no evolution.
Well, okay. Well, I'm just asking why the clitoris is there and what the function is. Because I think it's important. I think people would like to know that.
To whatever degree it helps procreation, that's what it's for. God made nature to procreate. Okay.
And if it's not needed for procreation, you can use it for other purposes.
If the purpose of marriage is love, then you can use it for whatever helps love. But the purpose of marriage is not love, so you can't use it for that reason. Unless you're Trent Horn or the Spirit of Vatican II and the new Code of Canon Law, which says marriage is about a partnership of love, and that's the essence of marriage. Therefore, you can do whatever the heck you want with three, like Michael Noll says, 3 guys and a billy goat. It's fine because it's love.
You have a wild imagination. Your mind goes to places mine would never imagine going.
It's uncharted. Love is uncharted. It has no definition. So if you can call it love, it's fine. Love wins, bro.
I bravely Google search the purpose of the clitoris.
Okay, what is it?
It only has a single purpose: sexual pleasure.
Uh-oh, that doesn't help us.
Well,
because hold on, conjugal act is not about pleasure, so it can't.
It's not legally for that reason.
So why did God put the clitoris there?
I guess to help the purpose, the natural purpose.
How? How did it help? How does it help that?
It creates such that conception happens. Without it, I guess conception wouldn't happen as easily or as much. That's why.
Not if you have that legal right, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, you don't even need to think about it. It's not even a point unless marriage is.
I think you should think about it.
I think there's a lot of wives that like men to think about it more. Okay. Well,
back to the original point of the whole topic, which is why I opened with it. If you can't define the essence of marriage, you're lost. You have to say if is marriage about love or is marriage about procreation naturally. One or the other. If it's about both, then you have two natures, and now you have no primary purpose. Marriage has no primary purpose, which means it has no definition, which means anything goes. And that's what we have today. Marriage means anything goes. And the whole problem started with the Protestant, I don't want to say Reformation, rebellion, because now you have taken the rights away from the church to decide what marriage is, and it's gone to the state. And then when the state started saying that with contraception, marriage is love, therefore marriage has no definition. So no fault is the only courtroom to judge a love-based marriage, because it's not about fault, because there's no rights. You have no rights. If marriage is about love, you have no rights. So what we have is lawless marriage today, which is why divorce is not a sin. If you ask your bishop, he'd say that. And anyone can get an annulment, because if it breaks down, you are not capable of love.
Okay.
As a side note, I think this is kind of interesting. The first comprehensive anatomical study of the clitoris was actually completed in 1998. And before that, it was never mentioned in journals. And so this one guy, a gynecologist, he was frustrated with that. And so they set out to really study it. And
maybe we always thought conjugal act was about procreation because we didn't realize
understand the clitoris. Yep.
Yeah,
before 1998.
So one thing that Vatican I says is an increase in scientific knowledge can't change what the Bible says. You're anathema. So it doesn't matter what we know now.
Sorry, Jonah, you're anathema.
I didn't study the clitoris.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you can't change nature based on human knowledge.
We're not changing nature. We're just
so like
updating
I said,
our understanding of what it is.
You can
Didn't Aquinas say that our understanding of science contributes to our understanding of God? Aquinas said something like that.
Sure, it does. Why not? You can understand things all you want, but you can't change nature based on understanding. You can't. Marriage can't change no matter how well or how little you understand it. Because
I don't think that's wrong. I don't disagray with that, but I think what we're talking about is our understanding of marriage.
That's why I say the definition of marriage is unchanging, and you can say, like I said, speed limit 25 or speed limit drive safe.
But you can have. There was a time when we had speed limit of 65 and 55, and we realized one is safer than the other. So you can have changes in what the speed limit is for different reasons.
That's right, because you're safe is not nature. Safe is whatever you think it is, but marriage is nature, so you cannot change the nature of it. And what we have today is nature unhinged, or marriage unhinged from nature. So marriage is like, that's why Christopher West is trying to say that supernature is marriage. So supernature is limitless. Love has no limit. The legal definition of marriage has no limit.
So let me ask you this then, not to pick on Christopher West. Actually, I'm going to support him here. So why is it that couples that use NFP have such a very, very low statistical rate of divorce? Why is that? You would think it would be opening the floodgates to divorce.
Because it does open the floodgates.
Especially the living in mortal sin.
Statistically, it doesn't. Like NFP couples have very, very low divorce rates.
NFP couples are sort of are religious, and they care about divorce, so they try not to. So the small percentage of people that use NFP are kind of religious, so they're going to divorce less. But when NFP says that marriage is supernatural and that has no legal definition. So when you get rid of love as being nature, you are back to reality, and you have kids, and that's it. And then you have rights. And that's why divorce is wrong, unless you can separate for a just cause based on a judgment from the bishop. And now we're back to no one divorces, because you go to hell if you do it without the bishop. And the bishop will say, if everyone had, these are the rights, and you can separate if somebody is beating you up, but the marriage is still there. And all these separations are frivolous, most of them.
So let me ask you this kind of final parting thought, because I do want to wrap this up.
Yeah.
So let's say kind of reestablish this older perspective on marriage and really emphasize the procreation, took out all this love stuff. Do you think that we should then discourage people from getting married, or encourage people to marry later in life, and be very, very intentional about who they choose and whether they get married at all? I mean, is that a fair then way to apply that standard?
People should get married young.
Why?
Because grace happens through marriage, and they get more grace, and the fertile window is 16 till 39 or whatever. So that's the way it's always been. And
it doesn't mean it has to be, though. It doesn't mean,
right. But
people did marry young, but
if marriage is love, then you really got to get your chemistry together. And still it gets blown out, because people say, I'm searching for love, and you have this phenomenon of desperate housewives, because they're not.
If marriage is not about love and marriage is about procreation, it seems to me that a lot of people should not get married at all, or should delay marriage.
And that's
because a lot of people, like, most people are not wired to just get together and make babies all the time.
And Paul actually says in 1 Corinthians that you should remain single.
Yeah. Maybe that's the end here, is we just strongly
should remain single if you aren't going to sign up for marriage. You can get married, or you can be single, but if you're not going to abide by what marriage is, don't do it. And marriage has to be defined. And definition means objective and straightforward. It can't be something that you cannot put in a calculator. The definition. So permanence is not up for debate, and exclusivity is not up for debate. We know what that means. And the right over the body for acts is not up for debate. We know what that means. But if you say
No,
marriage
that's
is charity, no, the right over the body.
yeah,
for
but
acts.
it's still subject to a reasonable standard of people,
Okay, so
which is ill-defined.
yeah,
Reasonable people could disagree about what reasonable is.
not much.
I don't think the bishop is in a better position to say how often a couple should be having sex than the couple
nobody
themselves.
has there is no, you don't have there, you can use the right as little or as much as you want, but it is a right. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to give you a chance, John, to give your final, anything you haven't got a chance to get out, or any of your final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up here.
The solution to the marriage is cratered, marriage is collapsed. I think we'd all agree that this marriage statistics are terrible and people aren't doing it. Like, MGTOW, right? You've heard of that?
Who? No.
MGTOW, men going their own way. There's tons of sentiment out there that people are not doing marriage, guys are not getting, because why sign up for something where people are incentivized to leave? And they're incentivized because the state gives you cash and prizes for leaving, and the bishop gives you communion and a new spouse for leaving. So why wouldn't I do that? And that's because the essence is not defined now. And if marriage is love, that means I have a right to love. That means if you're not honoring my right, then you're not capable of it. So my point is that we can all get back to normal if we just define the essence per nature. And we've left the building when we say love is the legal definition. And it's all Spirit of Vatican II smokescreen. And it started when you said that NFP is licit because marriage is now about love, not procreation. It's unnatural.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for your time, John. I appreciate that. If you have any of those sites that you want us to put in the description, just send us.
Yeah, I'll go find some of that stuff and I'll email it to you, and you can put it in there so we can. I always like it. You can kind of talk, and that's cool, but you got to be able to back it up in writing.
I like citations, so that's why I always
ask. I
Yeah.
do so that, and that's why people run. I'm always going to follow up, and for sure. All right. Well, I appreciate it. It's been cool, and I guess till next time or whatever. You're the
Sounds
man.
good. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for
started.
listening. Until next time, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one.